Yay, there we go. All right, so I clearly do too much work in Zoom. In that case, then I would like to say thank you so much, everybody, for coming along. Just delighted to have you with us today. Really, though, today isn't about me, although I am delighted to have you here. Today is all about Mr. Pete Brown. So Pete came to join us. Pete, I hope that's an okay picture of you. No, you look quite relaxed and chilled in that picture, I think.
Thanks, my twin brother.
Yeah, you don't normally look quite so relaxed or chilled. So Pete came and joined us on our bronze program that we ran in October last year. And one of the things that I think is important is that you get to hear from someone who's been through one of the programs that we run, because it's all very well me saying it was great, it went really well, it makes a difference, it's really helpful. I think it's also useful to hear from a participant's perspective as well. And what I would also really, really welcome is to hear from you as we work our way through the session today. So if there is something that you are thinking, something that you are feeling, something that you would like to say, then please do so in the chat. So pop open that chat window, say hello to each other, say hello to me, say hello to Pete if you would like, and let's hear from you in that chat window. And the question that I'd like to ask first of all, and all I'm looking for from you is a number. Okay, so that's the number. That's a number that I'm looking for from you in a response. Typically, if we think about the Kirkpatrick model, where level 4 is results, level 3 is about behavior, level 2 is about learning, and level 1 is about kind of reactions and how people, the engagement or the experience that people had when they might have engaged in some learning with you. What level would you say you evaluate to most often? Would it be level 4 in terms of you can say, yep, I'm looking at the results that we've had. Level 3, which is, yeah, we're looking at the kind of the behaviors that are impacting us, or level 2, where we're assessing the knowledge and or maybe the skills that have come with it. Is it level, or is it level 1, where we're looking at reactions? So Ray, thank you. Level 3. Simon also level 3. Maria says level 1. Thank you, Maria. Fiona says 1, sometimes 3, just skipping 2 in the middle, so that's okay. Robert says 1 mostly, with sometimes 2. Donna says 2. Pete says it depends. Oh, that's a nice consultant answer there, Pete. I love that. We'll come back to what depends means in a minute. Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you very much, everybody. And what I'd also like to know from you is, what are your biggest sort of training or learning or evaluation challenges right now? What are some of those challenges or difficulties that you're facing? So if you let us know in the chat, and while you do that, I'll say to Pete, tell me more about the depends, Pete. What do you mean by depends?
I think, well, it probably comes on to some of the learning from the program, really, is that not all programs are created equally. And you can waste an awful lot of time and effort evaluating stuff at levels 2, 3, and 4 when you don't need to. So I think it's a case of, what's the value you're trying to create? What's the accountability, perhaps, or the ownership of the organization on the training, and therefore what level do you evaluate at? And maybe I can touch on that a bit later on. So that's what I mean by it depends. In an ideal world, we do level 4 for everything, but the reality is we either haven't got the time, capacity, the inclination, or the necessity to do that, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, I agree. Okay, so let's hear from some others then in the chat. Let me know, what are your what are your learning or training or evaluation challenges right now? Donna says branding constraints and time. Tell me about, Donna, would you mind coming off mute for me and letting me know a bit more about the branding constraints? What do you mean by that?
Just within our company. So when we're designing material, I mean, more on that side, I mean, branding constraints that way, but time. So that what I mean by time is obviously time that we have and the time that the learners have. So creating material and stuff to fit around that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And so would that be, we just have someone else join in the waiting room, so I'm just gonna let them in. So I like your distinction there. So partly it's about your own time, and it's also about the time of maybe the participants that might be engaging in it to give you the feedback or the data that you might be looking for.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Donna. Fiona says data collection. We're depending on others to provide this, and also then agreement on what is a measurable indicator. Okay. So I agree with you completely, Fiona, that kind of challenge of, especially when we're thinking of in Kirkpatrick kind of world about level 3 and level 4, so much of that data kind of feels like it's out of our hands. And so how do we get that back in? And then what's a measurable indicator, and how might we measure it or quantify or qualify something? So yeah, I can understand those. Wonderful. Thank you, Fiona. Robert says, probably I don't have a good system to evaluate over long periods. I know that good learning has a special repetition, but that's also a struggle. Robert, would you mind just coming off mute for me and telling me a bit more about that in terms of what do you mean by a good system to evaluate over long periods? To be willing to let us know.
Well, I say a good system. I kind of mean much of a system at all. But we do have the ability to go and look at sort of feedback forms from the course. We could send out feedback forms a month later or whatever to get survey information. We don't really do that. But I feel like I feel like a bit linked to Maria's sort of thing, getting people to fill out a form to say, did you learn what you should have learned? It's probably not a good system. And then so there's that whole issue.
Yeah, okay. Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Robert. Okay. What else do we have then? So I should also say welcome, Ian. I spotted you in the waiting room and I've let you in. And also welcome, I'm going to say Meha. I'm going to go for Meha. I'm not sure if that's said correctly.
Yeah, it's Megha.
Megha. Thank you, Megha. Thank you, Megha. Lovely to have you with us.
Thank you so much.
So Maria says, getting the buy-in from learners and managers to complete evaluation forms. And then Ray says, not having a standard feedback loop for all clients. Okay. And is that, Ray, would you mind telling me a little bit more about that? Is that for you're providing training for different clients and there's no standard feedback loop for all of the different ones you might work with?
Yeah, so in a perfect world, or where we are located, in most cases, gap analysis would happen through feedback from operations. For example, a specific group that went live, they are struggling with A, B, and C. So we would obviously go in and analyze and see what those struggles are before we go in and design. I think the main thing after you've now designed the session, it's been delivered effectively. It's that evaluation part, that ongoing feedback loop that needs to take place. Or I would say after we've designed, for some clients, they won't really come back and say, hey, this has worked really great. We can see that through the measurement of our KPIs, for example, or look, it hasn't worked to what we expected. And then we go back to the drawing board. So maybe I think for us, that challenge is having a standard feedback loop. And it's hard because we've got a lot of clients and we're servicing many at the same time. So I think that's what I mean by standard feedback loop. It's more that evaluation post the training.
Wonderful. Fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing, Ray. I really appreciate that. Okay. So when we think about I guess the classic kind of sort of Kirkpatrick model in the 4 levels then. So we've got level 4, which is the degree to which the targeted program outcomes occur and contribute towards the organization's highest level result. So that might be in terms of the outcomes at a client perspective to the example you were just giving there, Ray, what's the impact that we're looking to have from a client point of view? Is it to do with service levels or quality levels or productivity, whatever that may be? So the degree to which the targeted outcomes occur. And I think that targeted outcome bit leads us back into, Fiona, your point in the chat earlier on about agreement on what is a measurable indicator. Because if we can't agree what the indicator is, then how are we going to know, or how are we going to establish if we've kind of hit that target, as it were? Level 3 then is the degree to which participants apply what they learned during training while they're on the job. Level 2, which a few people have mentioned already, the degree to which participants acquire the intended knowledge, skills, attitude, confidence and commitment based on their participation in the training or the learning activity. And the level 1, the degree to which participants find the training favourable, engaging and relevant to their jobs. So, general question for you, for which we can either use the chat or you can come off mute and let me know. Do you think the Kirkpatrick model can help create real behaviour change? Okay, well, I'm going to take our stunned silences. I don't know, really. So one of the things I think that the model itself doesn't help. Maria says, yes, I've seen this in the past. Wonderful. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Maria. I agree. I think it can. If what we do is we flip the model upside down. So we start at level 4 and then define what those results are. And then we think about what behaviors are needed to get to those results. And then if we know what those behaviors are, we can then decide what knowledge or skills or attitudes or levels of confidence or commitment people might need to get there. And then also, we might also want to know if they had a good time whilst they were doing it. Was it engaging? Was it relevant? Were they engaged? Sorry, was it relevant? And were they satisfied? And if we think about that sort of, whether we think about the ADDIE model or we think about the classic kind of design cycle of needs analysis, design, delivery, evaluation always comes at the end. And for me, that's just the wrong way to go about it. So evaluation always has to be in the middle. Our analysis informs our evaluation, which informs our design. And the way we design the program informs our evaluation as well, because we can use the design of the initiative to gather evaluation data. Similarly, in terms of the development of it, and when we develop, we don't just develop learning content, we also develop other systems and processes as well. And then when we implement it and we put it into place, we're evaluating as we go. So evaluation for me just kind of sits in the middle. Maria says, I've used this model when I do needs analysis, identify the required results and work backwards. Yes, absolutely, Maria. Definitely agree with you. Agree with you wholeheartedly, because that needs analysis is a brilliant resource for. I just also want to say welcome to Jay. Hi, Jay. Lovely to have you with us. That needs analysis is a brilliant resource to also tell us what's not working at the moment, because that's often what happens. Somebody comes to us and says, well, I need your help with X. And part of that analysis tells us why they need the help. And if they know why they need the help, then that tells us what we're trying to change as a result. So Fiona, that can make those things that we might want to measure more clear through that analysis phase. Well, it's been wonderful to have all of you contributing to the discussion, both in the chat so far. So thank you so much. What I'd like to do next then is to bring Pete in. And if there is something that you're thinking or feeling or would like to say, please add your questions into the chat, and or you can raise your hand in Zoom. So you can do that by going to there'll be a toolbar. On that toolbar, there'll be an option for reactions, and in there you can raise your hand. So if you want to speak, then raise your hand and we can come to you as well. So yeah, feel free to share either in the chat or raise your hand and we can bring you in audibly. But I'd like to bring Pete in, if that's all right with you, Pete.
Yeah, of course.
Fab.
Thank you.
So you came and joined us then back in, I think it was October, wasn't it? You did the bronze program with us. And you're within, so within NHS Wales, there are a number of health boards, or UHBs as they're known. And I think it's almost a little bit of kudos for you that you work for the health board that is named after the original founder of the NHS, which was Ian Bevan, who was a Labour MP who was one of the founding members of the NHS. So what have you noticed in terms of sort of benefits and outcomes for you and/or Ian Bevan so far?
Yeah, thanks, Phil. I'd also just give you a bit of context on the
Yeah, please.
organisation as well, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So apologies for those of you that aren't in the UK, but there are lots of differences between England and Wales, Scotland and Wales, and Ireland and Wales in the NHS. So the NHS as an employer is that, ginormous thing, the umbrella that covers it all. But the way it's set up is really different. So in England, for example, you have trusts, an NHS trust, which might be 1 or 2 hospitals.
Mm-hmm.
In Wales, they've divvied it all up by county, so broadly by counties. So a Ian Bevan Health Board, it covers the entire county of Gwent, which is in the southeast of Wales, and we encompass all the hospitals and all the primary care services. So we've got 5 hospitals, we have loads of GP practices, pharmacies, community services. So it's everything all bubbled up into a single organisation.
Mm-hmm.
So we're probably the equivalent size of perhaps 5 or 6 trusts mashed up together, as would be in England. So we have around 16 to 17,000 staff within the health board across multiple sites. And some of them are just up the road, but it feels like they're on another planet sometimes, both geographically and mentally. And that creates some real challenges for obvious reasons. So our funding is around about £1.6 billion a year. And as a health board, which is not unique to us, this year we're probably going to be somewhere in the region, so financial year, in the region of 40 to 50 million pounds overspent. That type of information is in the public domain. You have to just Google it to see the state of the NHS funding. So that's the backdrop which we're operating in. So within my role, where I'm one of the directors of organisational development, within my portfolio are things like talent management, leadership development, learning and development more broadly, the compulsory statutory and mandatory training, all those types of things. And so the bronze package that I went on with some others was just really important for us to make sure whatever we're doing is the most effective it possibly can be, because we haven't really got any money. In fact, we've got less than any money, with nothing changing particularly soon, but we've got a massive need for our services. And so it was really a case of, how do we use this to help us to direct our resources in the best way possible? So that's some of the context. I hope that's kind of useful just to set the scene. So some of the benefits for us so far. So as a health board, I think the biggest benefit is helping our senior leaders, one of the benefits, not the biggest, our executive team in particular, understand perhaps the value or the importance of some of our training. So we have, I guess, 2 types of training. One would be what we call statutory and mandatory training. That's the stuff everyone has to do. So when you start a new job, you get given a list as long as your arm of things, how you pick up a pen from the floor, the colour of fire extinguishers and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So we have somewhere in the region of, if you're a new starter, 13 hours of statutory and mandatory training you have to do in your first year. Now, the statutory stuff is things that the government tell us we have to do, and the mandatory stuff is the things that we think our staff should do. But you know what those are like. You go through it, you get as quick as you possibly can to the test at the end. You have a bash, and if you get it all wrong, you go back to the start, and then you do the same thing again, try and remember the ones you got wrong.
Yeah.
So when you think about that as a method of learning evaluation, I mean, level 2 is about as far as that's going to go. And it's been really interesting describing that to our senior colleagues to say, clearly you're not interested in behavior change or any actual shift in organizational performance because you're not interested in evaluating it differently. And if you compare that to, say, we're redeveloping a whole suite of leadership offerings at the moment for our clinical and non-clinical colleagues. The benefit, I think, for an Iron Bevan as well has been pushing back on the executive team to say, what are your expectations on this learning? What is it you actually want to see that's different as a consequence? Given the context of our finances and what we're trying to do as an organisation, what do you want this programme to actually do differently? And how will it contribute to our organisational performance? And I think that's taken them by surprise a bit, because I think in the past it's been a case of, you know, you get the learning ball at the back of the scrum, someone throws it to you at head height, you know, a bit of a hospital pass, and you go and do something in the background. Whereas now we're really starting to engage the exec team within it, push back to them and say, what do you want? And it's really interesting having those conversations, because quite often they don't know, or they just want something. They would like something off. Can't you just get something off the shelf? Haven't you got something that you can do with these people? And when you sort of describe, yeah, we could do lots of different things, but what do you actually want to achieve? And I think that's been a really, really good benefit. And it's built some really good relationships with our executive colleagues as well over the past few months. So that's probably my top one. I think the other benefit has been that we've taken a much stronger focus in engaging the learners in the interventions that we're doing.
Okay.
And if you would apply this to a change project, also engaging the people involved in the change in what we're doing. So rather than, you know, you've got that kind of expectation from the senior level, but actually going to the people doing the job and say, what is it that you think you need to improve your work? And we've gone to people who've been in those roles before as well and said, you know, what do you wish, or what do you know now that you wish you knew at the start? Or what do you do differently now that you didn't do differently at the start? And so bringing that into the process as well has also been really, really beneficial. And kind of having those two conversations gives you a really good sense of what you actually need to do. So something that I've been thinking about over the last few months is almost like, you know, you go from level 4, 3, 2, 1, and then having a flip, which is actually the design piece. You've got the evaluation piece, but you can then flip it and go, well, actually, if we want people to feel like this and have a reaction like that, how would that kind of then, what would you develop in order to achieve that? And if you want to have certain pieces of knowledge, well, what would you actually do? How would you design the content? What activities would you perform? And if you want these behaviors, you know, what is it that we need to support them with in order to get that? So it's also helped us to do not just evaluation, but flip it into that design piece as well. And that's been, I think those three things are probably my top highlights for us as a health board so far.
Fabulous. Wonderful. Thank you, Pete. Yeah, I think that I really love the what do you wish you now, you know, what do you wish you knew then, you know, looking back on it now. So with all the, you know, with the experience that you have and so on, what do you wish you had, what do you wish you knew, or what do you wish you had in place that would have helped you, so that, yeah, as you said, you can design those things or integrate those things into the design from the outset. I think, yeah, really important.
A good example,
sorry,
Bill,
go on. Yeah, go on, Pete. Yeah,
sorry
please.
to interrupt you.
No, go.
Is you know, recently we were asked to design a leadership program for some really senior managers of some of our hospital sites, and we asked one of our exec colleagues, you know, what is it you expect this program to achieve? So using a little bit of the language of Kirkpatrick, but not too much. And she described the change really nicely of what they wanted to achieve. And then I asked, you know, well, how do we know that we were achieving that? So sort of went a bit of level 3, and what would be the behaviors that you think would kind of feed into achieving that? And then, you know, what is it you think we should do with them? And it was really interesting how she couldn't distinguish between that kind of 2, 3, and 4. She kind of bucketed it all up into one single thing. So I think they need to do a bit of this and know a bit of that and get some of that better. And I think some of the feedback to us I remember when she replied to me via an email was, well, I think these are kind of the same question. So it's really interesting how they've never been asked these types of questions before. They just have these kind of good ideas and just kind of on that churn, but actually pushing back and asking them for their expectations, what they think are the indicators that will be different, what behaviors they want to see that are different, and so on has been really interesting, and really interesting that that a couple of those individuals couldn't distinguish between those. Perhaps they've never thought about it before.
Yeah, I think that can be fair. And it links in a way, it links back to the other point you made in terms of the suggestion that if what you want to see is data that proves people have passed the test, then that's as far as you care about, really. You don't care if it does any more than that. And if that's the case, then let's stop trying to do any more than that. Or if that's not the case and you do care more than whether or not people have passed the test, then we need to do something differently to gather that data in. So I think I really like the way that you've gone about engaging those different stakeholders in that way. Has that prompted some thoughts or some questions or some feelings from any of the group? I can see we've had nothing in the chat yet, which is okay. And I want to just make sure that I give you the opportunity, if there is something you are thinking or feeling or would like to say, that I give you the chance to do so before I ask Pete a different question. I can see typing faces on. Simon's got his typing face on. Fiona had a moment of, do I ask this question out loud or do I type it? And then she decided she was going to type it. So that's good as well. Simon says, we've been asking the wrong person. What do they want the people to do different? Tell me more about that, Simon.
Technology muting. So it came to us halfway through, and I did secretly message Fiona, and I went, oh shit, we've been asked, so we always ask, what do you want people to do differently? Mm-hmm. But because of the pushback we've been getting, it seems that we're asking the wrong people that question. We should be asking different people to stop this pushback happening. So
okay, yeah.
It's so we're when we're creating material, we're creating it for a particular customer, but we need it actually to be agreed by what they want, even if they're not even in the loop. These people that ultimately go, no, you're not doing that because it's wrong. Okay. They're the ones that we need to talk to and say, what do you want people to do differently? Which then would give us where we go with it. So that's what I meant by that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Simon. And Fiona, thank you for sharing, Pete. It's really good to know how you approached it. Wonderful. Thank you. All right then, Pete. So my first question was around sort of benefits for what have you noticed for and I and Bevan so far. What about for you and your team then in terms of kind of your practice? What might have changed or shifted about the way that you or your team are working so far?
Yeah, great question. I think probably the number one thing is, I know one of you mentioned earlier around time, is actually spending a deliberate time thinking about this stuff. I think in the past we've tended just to kind of bury our heads, get on and design something, and then crack on with session number one. I think the big difference is actually crafting time to do this, you know, whether it be an hour, a couple of hours, just to kind of get a sense of the 4 levels. And the questions with the 4 levels are really, really helpful. Just start thinking about what is it we're actually trying to achieve. If we can bring in somebody else as well, that's really helpful. If we can bring in some potential learners as well, that's super helpful. So I think spending deliberate time doing this is really important. I suppose my other part about that is, you know, it doesn't have to be this grand gesture. It can be really quick. It can be a little bit back of a fag packet to start with. As long as you've considered it, I think that's a really good starting place. And also, you don't need to do it for everything. I think one of the things that's changed about the practice is we're kind of obsessed by demonstrating our impact. And I think, you know, there's a bit of a thought around, well, it must do all 4 levels of Kirkpatrick to do that. I don't think you do. And there's a little bit of horses for courses here sometimes. I don't just mean that kind of compulsory compliance-based training, but even some of the other programs, they really don't need that kind of belt and braces approach of Kirkpatrick, all 4 levels. You know, one program that we deliver around leadership, entry-level leadership, you know, the sponsors, the executive sponsors really just want to make sure that there's lots of people doing it and they're kind of having a good time, because they're really keen that people just are inspired to continue to be leaders. And that's kind of like, great, if that's what you're expecting, that's great by us. So we won't bother doing the whole whack. And even with some of our bigger programs, so we've got a program which is got nearly 45 senior consultants on there who lead departments. Even with those people, we're not going to we'll use the 4 levels as our way of thinking about the structure of the program and how we support the shift in the transfer in knowledge, how we support those behaviors or skills that we want to see differently, which we think will impact results. But we won't do that with everybody because it'll just wipe out our entire team's capacity. What we do instead is we use the model to help frame the structure of the program and the support that's required around that program. But at the start of the program, we'll probably ask people, are you up for being kind of almost monitored, and are you up for kind of us talking to you, throughout the next 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, and would you be up for us chatting to your manager as well and some of your colleagues? And then we can kind of cherry pick 2 or 3 people from that cohort of say 40 that we'll follow, because quite frankly, we haven't got enough time and capacity to do everybody. Otherwise, we'll just spend our entire lives just monitoring people's behavior change.
Yeah.
So I think that's some of the things that we've shifted. It doesn't need to. It's great for structuring and thinking about how you design, and how you will evaluate. But I wouldn't do everybody. I think is the key part here.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I echo that completely. Because you could end up with, allocating a huge amount of resource, whereas you said, ultimately, are people just enjoying themselves, and that's it, because that's all we're really worried about. I used to run an induction program when I was working at a local authority, and when I joined, my task was evaluate it and then improve it. So I did an in-depth evaluation, and what I learned was that there were 3 things that made it a good or bad induction. So one of those was the venue, and the venue was always bad, because we couldn't afford to hire a venue because we didn't have enough money to do so. We were concerned it'd be deemed as a waste of money. So we do it in this prefabricated hut that was freezing cold in the winter, roasting hot in the summer. And everyone would say the venue wasn't very nice. The second thing was the local councillor. So the local kind of elected councillor who came along, depending on who we got, depended on whether people deemed value from the induction program or not. And then the third thing was the speed at which they joined the induction. So if they joined it within 4 weeks, they found it valuable. If they joined it beyond 4 weeks, then they deemed it was a waste of their time. So we put a process in place that made sure everybody came every 4 weeks. We had a short list of councillors who we would pick from, and if those councillors weren't available, we wouldn't have one, because we knew that they could really damage the quality of the induction, and we did nothing about the venue. At which point I stopped evaluating our induction, and I got so much grief from it. They were like, "Where's my reports that tells me how many people we've inducted?" And I said, "Well, you don't need it." Yeah, but how do you know if people had a good time or a bad time? Well, because they'll tell us. Because if they really hate it, the message will get to us somehow. It always does. People make a complaint, it goes up the chain, it comes across and comes down to me. And if they do make a complaint, we'll go and investigate it and look into it. But I'm not going to investigate, because at that point we had a member of the team, Julie. She would spend like half a day analysing each and every evaluation form we would do after every single induction that we ran. I thought, it's just a waste of effort. So we just stopped. So yeah, that's good. All right then, Pete. Next question for you then is
I think there's something in the chat there, Phil.
Oh, is there?
Oh,
no, it's all good. Thank you.
Yeah, so
go on.
But yeah, Jay's just mentioned, thanks for the question, Jay. Curious to know the programs you evaluate at all 4 levels, what areas are you measuring at 3 and 4, and some examples you can share. So yeah, I can share an example. So level 4 is really about those results, and what is it you're actually trying to see, and that links back to, I think, 2 things. One is the expectation of the people that are kind of giving you that sponsorship for the program. What do they expect to see? And then there's that other part around what is the strategic intent, so a little bit more specific about what people want from that program. I think it's important to get clarity on both of those. Excuse me. At that level 4, you have those leading indicators, is what Kirkpatrick called it. Sorry, level 4 around results. So the one thing that I kind of that I found really valuable about going through the silver is that there's lots of things that you can steal from other areas of the business when it comes to results, and even when it comes to leading indicators. So you don't have to create this suite of new evaluative measures. Quite often those things already exist. So for instance, whether you capture data on appraisals or 360s or turnover rates, retention, whatever it might be, all of that stuff generally exists anyway. So the first thing is have a think about what exists already, whether it's inside or outside your organization, but it kind of related to what you're doing, and steal it. And that'll really save you a lot of time. So we, for example, we already have staff surveys, pulse surveys, we have well-being stuff going on, 360s, appraisal, all that stuff is happening. So we've just tapped into it in a slightly different way, relevant to what we're trying to do. And I think that's really helpful to do. When you could think about level 3, so some of those behaviors, it depends what you're trying to achieve. So we're doing a lot of stuff around leadership and leading teams. So we have clinical senior consultants who go from being a really, really good clinician to all of a sudden having to lead a team. And throughout their 30 years of training to get to that level, they've had 0 training on leadership. They generally kind of say, well, I'll do it because I've been here long enough now that I think I can kind of do it. So for us, some of the key components of that development program are, do you have the structure of a team? Are you encouraging certain conditions within the team, for example, shared decision-making or psychological safety? And then we try and pick out what are the kind of the key things that you would see if someone was doing that really, really well. Or what are the kind of the skills that would be different in that individual if they were doing that really, really well. So a skill might be the way in which they run their meetings, or the way in which they problem solve as a group, or whatever. And so it's being really specific about what those things are that you want to see. I think one of the mistakes that we often make, certainly before the bronze, I keep saying silver, the bronze program,
it's all right,
is I just want my next medal. That's what it is. Is you try and achieve too much in either a single session or over a program, or you get bogged down with these really grand ambitions of the entire program. And actually, it's what's been really helpful is to kind of chip away, start to say, actually, well, in session number 1, we just want to do this one thing and do it really, really well, 2 things. And if we were to do that, these are a couple of the different skills or behaviors or attitude, whatever it might be, that we would see differently. So I think breaking it down into smaller parts, not trying to kind of boil the ocean, is a really good approach. So for example, if in the NHS in Wales in particular, there's a big focus on what's called compassionate leadership, which is a leadership approach from a chap called Michael West. It's very much a case of, it almost takes like a coaching approach to leadership. It's about how you support and engage with people, but you do it in a way which is very much empathic and helpful and so on. So, and there are some very clear skills which are related to compassionate leadership. And so we've kind of looked at what they are and go, well, those are probably the things that we would see if at level 3, those behaviors are being shown. Okay, so how do we go about measuring those then? And so it doesn't always have to be these kind of big grand plans. It can just be almost really obvious stuff. Don't forget the obvious stuff that you really would expect to see, and stealing measures from other people that could help you to kind of shine a light on those. I've kind of whistled through a bit of an example there, but I guess a bit of a promo for Phil's stuff is, if you go on the program, you get, you develop a full-on kind of 4-level approach, and then you get to see everybody else's as well, which is really useful, and to see how everyone else does it. So that's kind of one benefit, I think, from doing the program.
Maria made a point as well around the time being considered and allocated on the project to do it properly. Yeah, absolutely, Maria. Works on as a contractor on many projects, and they all start with a good intention, but then things fall through as operations couldn't commit to the time and effort needed. And I think, as Pete was saying, really, if we can be really clear on that from the outset, to say what we would like from you is to come and engage with you once per quarter or once a month, or we want you to share this data on this frequency, then someone can say, no, I'm too busy. And then I can go, right, well, if they're too busy, do I drop the frequency, or do I not get that data? Can I get it another way? But we can do that before we've kind of done the implementation, rather than doing what I think we often do is we do the implementation and then we go, oh, I wonder what data we can find. And then we just go and try and find some stuff that reinforces what we've done. Whereas actually we can turn it around the other way and see what we can gather early on. I think can be quite helpful. So I think, Pete, in a way, you probably mentioned a few key topics, areas or approaches that have informed your practice. Is there something you'd want to add to this question before I move on to the next one?
I think the key thing is how you support level 2 to level 3. Like level 1 and level 2 I see is very similar. Level 3 and level 4 are kind of the other end of the spectrum, but it's a bit like a bridge. And I think it's how you support that shift from 3 to 4 if you're thinking about the evaluation, or certainly thinking about the implication of those learning. And the support structures around going from 2 to 3 are the really important part. You know, we've used things like communities of practice, peer support, action learning, you know, having kind of a learning partner, accountability partner, that kind of thing. And a lot of the stuff that happens in that can help towards your evidence base around evaluation as well. Like I said, using the information that already exists across the organization, but by doing that, you also figure out what's missing. So in one of our leadership programs, one of the key expectations from the medical director was we want to improve the network of our senior consultants. And we realized that we actually have nothing which measures networks around our consultants. So we're doing some really simple, basic network analysis at the start and the end of the program to shine a light on that. It's really quick, it's really easy, but it will kind of tick off that box as well. Yeah. So yeah, those are kind of a couple of nuggets, I suppose.
Wonderful, thank you. And then in terms of again, I think you mentioned quite a few, so I don't want to ask you to repeat yourself. What have been sort of some benefits or outcomes that you've seen for you individually?
I think for me, it's a couple of things. One is it's probably given me confidence that I wasn't a million miles away in the first place, and it's given me some confidence that, you know, you read lots about Kirkpatrick or learning evaluation, and when you start reading the literature around learning, it can become really, it's like a new language at times. It becomes quite confusing, but it's not actually that hard. I think using the model as is a really good starting place. And there's a couple of podcasts around, you know, with Jim Kirkpatrick talking, which just lays it out really simply. So, you know, have a bit of confidence that you probably know more than you think you do, and just getting a few examples under your belt is a really good place to start. I think it's really helped me create clarity in what it is we're doing. And I know it's difficult to find time, but actually just putting a little bit of time, an hour or so at the start, can just save you loads of time. And you know, the longer on you go through the program, as you get that pressure to start demonstrating value, if you kind of put a bit of that donkey work in at the start, it makes the rest of it a lot easier to start to demonstrate. And you can also start kicking back on people and say, well, hang on, you haven't done that. And you say, well, you didn't ask us to. That wasn't the expectation at the start of the program. It pushes accountability back up the organization. And you become the experts of designing and delivering learning and evaluating according to the expectations of the organization and the business results. So yeah, I guess it's just given me a bit of confidence, quite a bit of clarity around these things as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Pete. So, you've mentioned where I was going to go next, which is the two kind of levels of certification we have. So there's bronze and silver. So bronze is what Pete engaged with back in October last year. And that helps you create the plan to evaluate a mission critical program. And then silver is about establishing the necessary communication, cooperation, partnerships, and to implement the plan and monitor report on progress. There is a gold. Gold is free. Gold is where we use our network and our connections to get you on stage and get you appearing in trade press and those kinds of things to showcase the work that you do. But what we also know is that the 2 days, kind of the two-day formal learning part of bronze is only a tiny part of what we do. So when we run a bronze program, yes, you get the 2 formal learning days. As Pete said, you get access to a community where you can see other resources and other people's plans, but you also get 12 months of support. So you get 12 months of support on the job. So we do some CPD events. You get one-to-one sessions with me or with our other facilitator, Joe, to help and support you with kind of how you take it from theory and make it real, really. Our next program is happening on the 23rd and the 30th of April. Two-day online sessions from 9 until 3:30 on both of those days. You're still in time for the early bird. We've got just about 2 weeks left of the early bird offer, where you can save yourself £300 on your kind of the average ticket price. We also do a discount for charity and third sector workers, and then if 3 or more from people from the same organisation want to come, that's where you can get the biggest discount, where you can get a discount of £400 per person. So it's a 2-day event. Like I said, you get the opportunity to create your own plan with the expert guidance from myself or Joe. You get your own manual, you get the 12-month support and the community group, and you get a book as well. So you get the Kirkpatrick 4 levels book that Jim and Wendy Kirkpatrick put together as well. This was something that Leanne, a previous participant who came on our bronze program, said in terms of when she came with us on January in 2020, and how she took and applied what we do from here. So is there something else, something more then that you might be thinking, feeling, or want to say before I close us off? Okay. In which case, then I will say, Pete, thank you so much for coming to join us today. Thank you for sharing your thinking. Thank you for being open with the experiences that you've had, and what you've had so far. So, is there something you'd like to, say, Pete, to close us off?
I feel the pressure of saying something with it's really impactful. I just think thank you, Phil, for the opportunity to join the program. It's been fab. We're very much at the start of this journey. We've managed, through the work that we've done together, push this out across the NHS in Wales, which has been really, really positive.
Yeah, definitely.
I think just getting people away from the fact that a learning event is going to be that mind-blowingly transformational, that people are going to miraculously be different on the job, is just a complete facade. And I think this is a really useful way of supporting people to actually make a difference to performance. So I guess that's it. And if anyone wants to get in touch, by all means get in touch, and happy to share some of my thoughts and learning beyond what's been the quickest hour of my life, I think.
Wonderful. Thank you, Pete. What we'll do when we send the recording out, if it's all right, Pete, if we put your LinkedIn profile on there so that people can connect with you if they want to.
Yeah, no problems.
Yeah, wonderful. Fantastic. Okay. I've also popped into the chat 3 other resources that you might want. So one is a link to our newsletter. So if you wanted to sign up for our newsletter so you can get more insights building on today, then feel free to do so. There's also an opportunity for you to book a call. So if you've got some follow-up questions that maybe you haven't asked or had the opportunity to ask, then please feel free to book a call in with myself or one of the team, and we can answer. Or if you're ready to book your place, then that's where the 3rd link is. So you can book your place on the program as well. So an email will follow with the link to the recording with all of the discount codes and how to book, and a link to Pete's profile, and a link to how to book a call if you'd like to do so. And otherwise, I will say thank you so much for your time. So Fiona, Robert, Ray, Donna, Simon, Jay, iPhone 6, Mecca, and Ian, thank you so much for your time today. It's been lovely to see you all, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye.